I knew from like a really young age that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I was 10 years old and I picked up my parents' video camera and I made a really stupid movie with some of my friends. And from that moment, I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. And so ever since then, I've just been working to make that a reality and to make this a reality as a career. And then when I was 12 or 13 years old, I picked up a copy of American Cinematographer magazine and I saw these pictures of these cinematographers working with lights and cameras and collaborating with directors, and I said to myself, this is what I want to do with my life. So it's amazing all these years later to be at Hofstra, to think back to, you know, all those years ago, imagining where I would be someday. And in many ways, you know, those dreams are coming true right now. You know, I'm on sets, I'm collaborating with directors, I'm getting to create images and I'm getting to tell stories that are really powerful and unique. And I just couldn't ask for a better experience than that. And to come here and to have the mentors that you always dream of, to have professors that are there helping you, you know, talking with you, collaborating with you, it's just an absolute dream come true for someone who's wanted to be a filmmaker since they were a kid.
Filmmaking in general is hard. It just is. There's too many dimensions you have to deal with. Doing it for your first time and wanting to do it properly, I needed to be able to have room to mess up. What made me choose Hofstra, honestly, is it's the university that accepted me purely because of my essay. I had a 2.2 out of high school. I just didn't look good on paper, but I knew that I was smart. The first semester I was here, I got on a dean's list. I actually thought I was going to do the television program, but one of my professors, when she had me, she's like, "You're not a television kid, you're a film kid." That's really the reason I came to Hofstra. They saw me. Making Kill was kind of the film kind of, at the end of the day, it's talking about the outliers that you don't immediately understand. When you think different or you operate very differently and the other person can't understand you, their default setting can't be you're a bad person or you're dangerous or because I don't understand you. This objectifying what we're kind of doing societally right now to like people. We don't treat people like individuals, we treat people like appearances. Once I got to the point where people got to interact with the film like that, and when I won the Hofstra Film Festival, that's when that happened. That's when that happened in full force. Film production can give you the tools, but how you apply it as a storyteller, that's a lot of your own path. So you need to be educated on so many different ways of making film. Film is not just Marvel. Film is not just The Matrix. Film has so many different identities. It's not defined. You're setting out to define it in your own way.
Hello, folks, and welcome to our conversation with the directors David and Francisco Salazar. They're a couple alumni from Hofstra University, graduated a few years ago, and they've just completed their first feature film, which is a long form, at least an hour and 15 minutes long, that you would normally see in theaters, which is quite an achievement. You've heard some of the other filmmakers, and now we're going to get a chance to talk with them. So their film, Nowhere, completed in 2020, also known as Adrian Sebastian, is available through Amazon Prime through Deku, which is a distributor. And so without further ado, we're going to start with David, and hopefully his collaborator will join us shortly, Francisco Salazar. David, how are you?
Hello. Hi, Bill. How are you? It's so good to talk to you. It's been some time.
Yeah, it has been. So what year did you graduate again?
I graduated in 2010.
2010. And
Yeah.
Fran graduated?
2011, one year later.
Yeah, so it's so funny. As you get older, I'm thinking you graduated like 4 or 5 years ago, but it's been a decade.
It has. It's been a long time, but I still remember it very fondly. And yeah, I mean, I still remember my time at Hofstra like it was yesterday. I have a lot of amazing memories in the filmmaking program, of course.
Right. Yeah. No. It's a really rigorous program. So, 10 years. How? So you just didn't arrive at making this film out of the blue. You've been doing things for 10 years to get you here. What have some of those things included in your journey from film school to making your first feature?
Yeah, so I remember my brother and I, when we graduated, we're like, okay, now what happens next? And I think we toyed with the idea of like graduate school for film for a bit, but then we started kind of doing a little bit of freelancing. I did a lot of like camera assistant work for a couple of years, and my brother was on and off doing like AD gigs here and there. And then I think it came to a point where we hadn't made a movie for like 4 years, and the camera assistant thing was fine. But I wasn't really, this is not where I wanted to go. I wanted to still write and direct films. So I think my brother and I were like, it was like around 2015, we're like, let's just shoot a film. Let's just make a short. And we wrote something, and we spent like a better half of a year putting the script together. We shot it in February of 2015. And that was Adrift. And then after that, we like made another short, and then we made another short a couple of years later. And at that point, we had been trying to like get a feature film made sometime as well. We had a other script that went into pre-production. It didn't work out. And when that fell through, we kind of just like, all right, we're going to make a feature film. We just have to figure out what we can do. And then that's kind of where Nowhere came from.
And Francisco, your brother and co-writer, co-director, co-producer, really, is joining us. Francisco, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Great. This is awesome. So, this is a great segue into talking about just this unique partnership that you guys have. Your brothers, and I have brothers, and I thank God I'm not trying to do anything with them. But that's you're not unique in this. There were Wachowskis, formerly the Wachowski brothers, now the Wachowski sisters. There's Joel and Ethan Coen. So there are other collaborators who actually happen to be siblings as well. So tell me about how that creative process works for you guys.
I think it's really interesting because Dave and I, well, we were raised, we're 1 year apart, not even 362 days. So, we've been collaborating from the beginning. We were first musicians, and then as musicians, we collaborated a lot, and that helped to create a very good communication. Music really helps you delve into, you constantly have to be talking and communicating and phrasing and this and that. So that really helped us segue into our own filmmaking experiences, because in filmmaking, you have to constantly be communicating, talking about ideas. And I know that when my brother and I sit down to write a script, the process has changed a lot, but we constantly talk about scenes. We're always like working on different aspects.
We're always challenging each other.
Yes, exactly, and we're always questioning each other. So that really helps us too. And on set, it's the same thing. We're constantly in communication and talking. But the communication is also really interesting, and it's very shorthand because we know each other so well that when we don't like something, we know very well.
We feel it. We can feel it.
Dave gives me a look, or I'm like, and we know at some point that it's not what we want. So
yeah, I think because of like we've made a lot of shorts together, and especially on this feature film, where I think we had more differences of opinion than we've ever had on any single project. There was still a certain like intuitive understanding of each other, so that we could kind of make things work seamlessly. And I think that even if, for example, I was much more communicative with the actors and my brother was a little bit more communicative with, the production team, the production designer, different aspects, we already had enough discussions about what we wanted from the story. We had already kind of talked about all those things that we there's also a level of trust, right? You have to kind of understand that, because film is such a huge undertaking, because there's so many elements and there's so many people you're talking to on a daily basis, on a moment-to-moment basis, that you have to be able to, it's amazing to actually have my brother there, because I know that I can just like, if the art department needs us now and the actors need us now, one of us can take each thing, and we both trust each other to do the thing that we both want.
Right. So there's so many different skill sets that can go into, are required to make a film. And sometimes students or other people will ask me, goes, well, what should I learn? What do I need to know to make a film? And so I'm wondering, what skill sets have you discovered? And David, have you realized that there's some things that you'd rather do? And Fran, have you realized that there's some things that you'd rather do?
Well, I mean, the great thing about the education that we got was that we were very well-rounded, and that's not to say that, I really enjoyed my experience when I was at Hofstra. We were able to take different types of courses. I know very well when I'm on set. And I'll tell you for a fact, I am not. My strongest point is not lighting or camera or anything that is technical. I really like the more creative, the more visual. So, I mean, I work a lot. We worked a lot with the costume. I worked a lot with, wardrobe. I worked a lot with art direction and giving them what I felt was. I like to work with the producers and budgeting. I think I enjoyed those aspects and those creative aspects. Obviously, I love working with actors. I think it's a wonderful experience discovering your character. But when it comes to technical things, with lighting and just show me the shot and I'll tell you if I like it or not. And if I don't like it, I'll ask them to fix it. But that's not one of my strongest suits.
Yeah, I personally love working with actors. I enjoy that process a lot, and I think on this film, I think I was probably the one that was more communicative with the actors throughout. But that's one aspect of it, and then of course, the one skill that continues to elude me, and that I work really, really hard on all the time is screenwriting. Because at the end of the day, and I read Akira Kurosawa's biography. Or something like autobiography, as he calls it, and he says like you can't make a good film from a bad script, and I mean that's just I think when my brother and I are starting a project, that's the one thing that I think that's the hardest part of the project process, and that's the one thing that I kind of like really put. I don't want to say I put the most effort into, but for me, like once I really feel good about a screenplay, like with this film, once we felt really good at the screenplay, I think the rest of it, despite a lot of challenges we had to do, it was just fun. It was just a lot more fun once we kind of felt really good with the story.
Agreed.
So take me on the journey of this film and how you came to work with your DP, Jose Silva, and your producers, who I think are Colombian, and I'm not going to pronounce her name correctly.
Jimena.
Jimena, thank you, because it starts with an X. And in English, we don't have too many words that start with an X. The X-ray or something like that.
Yeah.
And Oscar and Brian and Julian. So tell me about the journey and getting how this film came to be.
So as I mentioned, like we had another feature film, didn't work out. We started writing this one, 2016. This is where we are. And we wrote the script. We basically spent all of 2016 writing the script for this, and
a little bit of the 2017.
A little bit of 2017. We only knew Jimena. Like we had traveled to Colombia in 2016, and we met Jimena because of some friends of the family who were like, "Oh, you work in film? We know a film person. Meet this person." So we went out to lunch with her, and we met her, and we like clicked. And at one point, when we're writing the script for this film, we're like, wouldn't it be cool if we shot most of the movie in Colombia? Even though it takes place in New York, maybe we should look into shooting most of it in Colombia. So I basically, May of 2017, I traveled to Colombia on my own. Mm-hmm. We had already talked to Jimena. Jimena was like, well, let's see what we can do. So it was a leap of faith. We had no idea if this was actually going to work out. I was literally going in blind. I was like, let's see what Jimena can do for me. And the first few months, Jimena was the one that brought the whole crew together. She brought the whole production team together. She had already worked with Jose's company. She had already worked with the other production company who focused more on sound work. And she brought us all together into this co-production that allowed us to put the film together. And that's really how it came apart. She was instrumental in making sure the team came together.
And meanwhile, I was in New York and I was doing all location scouting, and I was helping the team bring together the look of New York. So if they needed something, I was constantly going around New York City and taking pictures of restaurants and taking pictures of clubs and bars and stuff like that to try to give
Right, because
than
we're
the
trying to
work.
find the equivalents in Colombia. Like we're trying to find a restaurant in Colombia that looks like it could be a New York restaurant. We're trying to find an apartment for these guys in Colombia that looks like a New York City apartment. So my brother was literally like sending photos and being like, "This is what it should look like. This is what we want." And we're trying to. And Jimena's like running around all of Bogota trying to find that equivalent in Colombia.
And I was and yeah, and so I was giving them. So it was a really amazing group effort, and everyone contributed their own their own in their own way to trying to putting the film together.
Yeah, so this is a really kind of unique story film to try to create an independent film and raise money for. I'm going to do my best to give a brief synopsis of the film. You can sort of jump in. But okay, so it centers around two Colombian immigrants who are living in the United States, and they're a gay couple. And one of them loses their visa and may have to be deported back to Colombia. And this raises a whole sort of tension in their relationship. Will they stay here, and find a way to stay, like through an arranged marriage, or will they go back home to Colombia, which is politically and socially and sexually repressive? How did I do on my synopsis?
That's
Pretty
perfect.
Pretty good.
Okay, so not like The Matrix, not John Wick, not like a mainstream kind of easy, non-controversial subject matter, right? So how did you decide to do it? Is it like the story hits you and you just know you have to tell it no matter what the obstacles are, or did you have a sort of thought process that there is a way that I can make this political and emotional romance palatable to? What was your thought process regarding going into doing this?
Well, I think one of the most important things for me personally is that the story has to hit some type of personal aspects, and I think that we always wanted, and I think something that we had always seen lacking in our storytelling was something that had to do with our own background and our own culture. So it was really important, and this was after doing masters and doing a lot of work on what Latin American cinema means. I think it was really important that we tell a story that hit home in some way, shape, or form. So I think that, and that's really how my storytelling has evolved throughout the past 10 years since having started college. I think it really delves more into my Latin American background and other things and situations. For this film, it was based on two different scripts. My brother was telling a story about an immigrant family, and I was trying to tell an LGBT story, and so we decided to bring those two stories together and also use some examples of friends that went to school with us to our masters, and in any way, shape, or form had the same issues of losing their visas and trying to stay in the United States. We had a Colombian friend who had to end up going back to the United States because he refused
back to Colombia.
Back to Colombia, because he didn't want to. He didn't want to do one of these sham marriages, and he had no other way. He couldn't get a job. He was doing internships, but he couldn't find a way to stay, so he went back.
Yeah.
Right. So David Henne, who is with us from the School of Communications and is facilitating all this, could you play the dinner scene clip? Because I think that would be interesting place to jump into our next conversation.
Hola. Hola. ¿Alguien tuvo un buen día, cierto?
Sí, ¿tú?
No tanto. Me tocó hacer un montón de cosas en el trabajo que no son parte de lo que tengo que hacer, pero tomemos algo. ¿Sí? ¿Te parece?
Sí, dale lo que quieras.
Can I have 2 glasses of Cabernet Sauvignon, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Bueno, ¿y cómo van las aventuras en la oficina del doctor Vanegas? No te preocupes, que todo va a estar bien. Además, ¿sabes qué? Yo creo que puedo presionar un poquito más a Megan. Ella está en deuda con nosotros, ¿no?
Ok. ¿Sabes qué?
¿Qué?
Adivina con quién hablé.
No sé.
Con Alex.
¿Con qué, Alex?
Con el enano.
¿Lina?
Sí, adivina qué.
No sé.
Se va a casar.
Elena no se va a casar.
Sí, se va a casar. Está en Medellín y está yendo súper bien como abogado.
¡Qué bien!
Sí, ¿sabes qué más me dijo? Que uno de sus clientes está buscando un gerente de mercadeo o algo así. Y también que están buscando gente como para trabajar en zonas rurales.
Not yet, thank you.
Sí, me encanta.
¿Tú qué estás haciendo?
Pues estaba pensando que si lo consideramos, ¿no? Medellín, Cartagena.
Pero es que ya habíamos considerado venir aquí. Acá estamos a salvo, estamos lejos.
Pero este no es el caos que queríamos.
No, es que aquí no hay ningún caos, solamente hay un plan que hay que seguir al pie de la letra, es lo único que te pido. Por favor, prométeme que no vas a hacer nada de esto. Prométemelo.
So I love that scene, by the way. It raises a couple of questions, and that is so Adrian is the character on the left side of the screen wearing the light colored shirt, and Sebastian is wearing the red colored shirt. And Adrian is the one who's adamant that they remain here, but Sebastian is considering maybe my life could be better in Colombia. And so, as an American, we always think that the world revolves around us. Do they have culture and civilization in Colombia? I mean, he talked about being like working for an agency. Tell me about life in Colombia. Is it a possibility for them? Like, tell me, disabuse us Americans of how we think about Latin America.
Well, I think that in the context of the story, and I don't want to spoil too much, but Sebastian left the Colombia to be with Adrian because Adrian does not want to come out to his parents. He's scared, and he doesn't. Adrian's the kind of guy who likes everything the way it is, and he wants to keep his family comfortable and keep himself comfortable. And he's found a haven in the United States, and for him, that's fine. Sebastian is at a point in his life where he's like, well, things aren't working out for me in the US, so I got to reconsider my life. And maybe, even though I don't necessarily want to deal with, being gay in Colombia and some of the challenges that might come with that, I got to think about the possibility that, you know what, I'm just going to be myself and go back and live in Colombia. And that's kind of where they are in the story at that point. And yeah, I mean, Colombia, and I think my brother can speak better to it in many ways. Colombia is, there's still a lot of things that like in every country, right? There's still a lot of very conservative people that obviously hold certain views that are unfair and prejudiced. But Colombia is a country, and especially in the big cities like Bogota and especially Medellin, there is a lot of cultural progress, and there is kind of more awareness of respect for people's rights in those places.
I think it really also depends on your background. I think with Adrian, we spoke a lot about where does he come from. He comes from a rich, who has a family who has some type of money. In this point at the story, they're not doing so well. But there's this idea of appearances, and we spoke a lot about in Latin American culture, a lot of families have to maintain a certain amount of appearances, and that happens a lot with a lot of well-off families. It also happens with even in poor in middle-class families as well, where things are not as accepting. But I think just like in every single country, I think Colombia has made small steps and has progress and has created a wonderful community of where there's now a zone of tolerance, and where you basically there's no tolerance for intolerance. So that is something that I think in the past few years has really evolved. But I think one of the great things about in the US, these guys live in New York. New York is this open and this great city where there's so much cultural diversity, and seeing that, it's like a safe haven. But if you go to other places in this country, we don't see that same cultural diversity. And the same thing happens in Colombia. And I think that's why there's this for Adrian, he's very scared because his family is very conservative. His family has this form of it wants to maintain these appearances, doesn't want to get rid of this perfection that they've created, these traditions that they've also instilled in their own family values. And I think that's something that for Latin Americans, I think it's still very difficult for those
certain families.
for families for sure.
So Adrian and Sebastian decide to go an extraordinary route to try to stay here in the United States. So David Henning, if you could take us to this next clip of the marriage broker scene.
Have you done this before?
I've set up many people before.
What kind of people?
I do background checks on everyone. When do you want to get married?
A month or so? Yes.
A month. You're joking, right?
No. Why?
You have a lot of things to prep to make it seem real.
Can't you make it work?
You mean, can you make it work? You have a lot of work to do to sell this in front of an officer when the time comes. And the marriage ceremony goes a long way.
What do you need from us?
Once we agree here on the terms, I'll find you someone that works. Then we prep the wedding, then I'm out. All the other immigration stuff is on you.
How early would he be able to apply for his green card?
That's a few months.
And cost?
$20,000, half up front, half when it's done.
We were told it would be around 10,000.
I have to pay the person marrying you. Otherwise, they either don't do it or they call immigration on us. And I'm not doing this for free either. Plus, you're asking for a lot in a little bit of time there, buddy.
Okay, 12,000 then?
No one's bargaining here.
This is illegal, right? Are you afraid of people turning against?
You're not the first one to threaten me. I'm still here. They're not. 20,000.
Wow. She's hard as nails.
And she was the sweetest person you've ever met. Well, working with her was so much fun.
Right. So, yeah, this scene to me points out the sort of desperation of a lot of immigrants, which is the current political, football in some ways, but especially with the Republican administration, not taking political sides here. But and it's still an issue currently with the Biden administration. It seems kind of, I almost feel like we should go into like a Europe thing and let people go where they want to go. How emotional is this issue of immigration and personal is it for you?
Well, our parents are immigrants, and they were lucky enough to come here in a very in the best way, and they got
very different
circumstances also. But we did have some family members who did stay here illegally and who had a hard time with their green card for a long time, and it was a very difficult and grueling process where we saw lawyers steal money, where we saw lawyers working it so that they can, make more money off of them, where there was, it was years and processes of challenging.
Dead ends.
Exactly. And I know, Dave.
Yeah. So on that end, we did have that experience firsthand, and we did see different aspects, like my brother said. And then, of course, when we went to graduate school, we spent a lot of time with a lot of students, international students. And, some of our closest friends were dealing with this stuff. Like my brother said, one of my friends, a Colombian who studied at Fordham with me for my master's degree, he was in many ways one of the major inspirations for this part of the story, because I think my brother and I were in an early stage trying to figure out what we were going to do with Adrian and Sebastian. How are we going to figure out what were they going to try and do to solve this? And I sat down with my friend Andres and I said, like, what's your experience been like? What have you been doing? And he told me all the kinds of things that were offered to him, all the kinds of things that people were telling him that he should do to stay. And he told me all the things that how he talked to people and what he was scared about and how he didn't feel comfortable at. So yeah, what you see in that scene and all that experience, we've had it firsthand when we were a lot younger as children, and then we've seen it firsthand much more as firsthand as adults with a lot of our colleagues in our master's program specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So Miguel Gonzalez, who plays Adrian, and Juan Pablo Castablanco, who plays Sebastian, I believe they're both Colombian actors themselves. What were they able to bring to this particular role?
Well, with Miguel, he actually he immigrated. He was actually an immigrant in Argentina. So he went from Colombia to Argentina because he was a Disney star in
Latin
Latin
America.
America, and then he had come to the United States. So was able to see a lot of experiences of living in different places around his life and his lifetime. So he was able to give those different opinions of his own experiences being in, for example, Argentina, or even being here in the United States when he was brought to different events that he had to do and cover for Disney.
And Juan Pablo, he was much newer as an actor. He hadn't had as much experience as Miguel had, but when we auditioned him, we immediately kind of felt that he was very flexible, and he was the kind of person that I knew from that audition that he was going to be very open to designing the character, creating the character with us. And so with it was a very different process with both of them, right? Like Miguel is a very technical actor. He's trained, he's worked for many years. He has a very specific way that he does things. And so I think that actually suited the character of Adrian perfectly, because in many ways, Miguel's personality and Adrian's personality are one and the same. With Juan Pablo, it was a little bit more of a process where he was building the character bit by bit, and it kind of fit nicely with the character of Sebastian, because this is a guy who's basically just been following his boyfriend everywhere, and then he kind of starts finding himself and kind of starts asserting himself, and so it kind of fit that dynamic also in terms of the creative process, and then what ended up being the final result on film.
Yeah, it's interesting because as we get into the details of the story, the gay romance has complexity and has levels, and in part it seems like there is a coming of age story buried in here, and that is Sebastian learning to be his own person, which is something which would be part of any romantic relationship, heterosexual or homosexual. But I like the fact that there is this sort of dynamic of coming of age even within the relationship. How did you come to that particular aspect of the story, and why did it have resonance for you?
So I think that when we talked about the story initially, one of the big things for us from the beginning was that we were going to have this be a couple that had been together for many years. Because in looking at a lot of LGBT films that have been made over the years, one of the big tropes of the genre is that people are the central couple is meeting each other for the first time. So that then the film kind of bases itself on how the challenges that they face in kind of building their relationship. But we wanted to kind of flip that a little bit and kind of deconstruct the relationship and show why it would fall apart after being together for so long. And one of the things that really came to us, I think we kind of had Adrian's character pinned down very early, because the story at the core of his story is fear, and him inability to kind of like come to terms with the fact that he's a gay guy and he's going to fight for his identity and fight for who he is, and the fact that whatever ends up happening in the story is the result of his ability to deal with it or not. And we need to counteract that. So when we were writing the script, Sebastian was always the guy who was kind of like, early drafts of the script, he was like a football being thrown around by Adrian to try and figure out how they were going to solve the problem. And again, we got to a point where we were losing the relationship. We kind of actually really focused very differently on the green card marriage, and Sebastian's character was kind of null and void. He was literally a plot device. So we kind of slimmed down on the marriage aspect of it. The character that was originally supposed to marry him and actually was a major plot development turned into Stephanie. And then basically she allowed us to say, okay, if she's not going to be going along with it, if she's going to be much more of a mirror for them, what is she going to be talking about with these guys? How is she going to confront Adrian? And then we realized, in the middle of this, Sebastian needs to find who he is. And that's kind of where the story started to develop. And then slowly but surely, we really found a way to develop. And it worked really nice for us in terms of the writing, because you have one guy who won't move anywhere, who's very like, this is me, this is the hill I'm gonna die on, per se. And then you have the other character who's been following him the whole time and starts deciding to, oh, you know what, maybe I need to reconsider my life as well. So that's kind of where the coming of age story came from. It was not the first thing that we came to. It was one of the last things in the development of the script that came to realization.
And we were even rewriting some scenes while we were on set because to make that character work even and give it more strength.
It's interesting. The character of Adrian, who is the more sort of the person who wants to stay here in the United States, gets very sort of aggressive, and his sense of calm starts to dissolve. And so, David, I'd like to go to this a scene where he gets so agitated and irritable and aggressive about maintaining his lifestyle that he confronts the character Stephanie that you talked about, who is a close friend of the relationship.
Hey.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. You?
Good?
Are you busy?
No. Do you want to come in? Yeah, sure. Come.
Are those from the other day?
Yeah. Sebastian told you? Oh, no. No, those no. Please, no. I think it's nice. What do you think?
I like it.
Yeah.
Have you talked to him?
Yeah, sure.
Listen, I know you said no. I understand you have your life, your goals, but he will stay only if you marry him.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Whose idea was it to come here?
Both of us?
Okay, because I thought that he came here for you.
That was our idea.
Didn't he?
Who cares? What's your point?
Don't you think that Sebastian cares?
Are you going to help us?
Adrian, it's not about helping. I mean, don't you think it could be a great idea if, for once, just for once, you could follow his lead?
Okay, you're right. You're right. That was my idea.
Yes.
But I brought him here, and I haven't let him down ever since.
So say it. Just admit it. Admit that you came here because he was willing to give up everything he could have been. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but...
How much do you want?
Excuse me?
How much do you want? Well, let's get the bull.
Oh, no,
Let's
Adrian.
get to the point.
No,
How
Adrian,
much do you want?
No, you're not getting it, Adrian. I can't help you. At least not like this, okay?
Wow, I just love that scene.
I love that scene too.
I love that scene. You know, in some way, okay, let's just say it. Adrian is a jerk, but there's some ways in which it's the story is a coming of age story for Sebastian, but it's almost a tragedy for Adrian. Those two characters. And before you answer, I just want to say to all of our viewers, please get your questions ready. We're going to turn to your questions in a moment, so please get them ready and put them into the YouTube chat, and we'll we'll try to answer as many of the questions as possible. So, is Adrian's story the person who we just saw on the scene with Steph? Is his story a tragedy?
We've actually discussed that a lot. We discussed it a lot because we talked about, friend, do you want to take while I collect my thoughts?
Really interestingly, I identify a lot with Adrian's story. I think Adrian's story was one of the things that we discussed a lot, and I think it happens to a lot of people where they have to go back and they have to confront the difficult situations, and they have to figure out how they're going to live life. Because I think there's a lot of Adrians in this world, and I think you can't really live your life lying. You can't really live your life finding, continuously hiding yourself. So I think in many ways, I don't think Adrian's story is a tragedy. I think Adrian's story is his reality, and the only way that he can be happy is if he confronts whatever it is that he has to confront, whether it's his parents, whether it's himself being gay, whether it's his fears, whether it's and I think that in many ways I think all of those things, all those aggressions and all those ways of Adrian, how he is, it's all made up because of the way that he lives, and it's because he's hiding, because he's not sincere with himself, his parents, with Sebastian. And we can call that a very toxic. It can become toxic, and it can only be greater as it grows and as it goes. So I think in many respects, it's not a tragedy. It's just a form of a disillusionment, and it's a way of realizing that you have to confront all of those fears, all of those things around, and you have to be brave.
So we wrote, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
I mean, so there's an original cut of the film where I think the film does end more tragically, because Adrian, I guess spoiler territory, Adrian loses everything, right? And in the original cut of the film, which we didn't like, he had nothing he could do about it. In this version, we changed the ending so that at the end, when he goes looking for Sebastian, again,
There's
spoiler alert, he makes a decision at the end. And that decision kind of suggests that maybe he has come to terms with certain things that he needs to do to improve his life. I think we do leave. I do think that the goal was to kind of leave audiences kind of wondering what's the next step for this guy. And in that way, yes, it is tragic. But at the same time, I like to think that there is maybe there is a positive about the fact that he does go back. And he is ready to talk to his parents about it, as a late scene shows, and the fact that he does look for Sebastian and he makes a decision when he sees him. That I think that when you consider those choices, I think you can maybe see some progress in his story, and maybe the fact that he did come to terms with something about the mistakes that he made. So I think it's a mix of both. I definitely think that when we re-edited the film and reshot the ending, we definitely had the intention of maybe not making it so tragic.
Okay, I didn't feel actually that it was tragic at the end. I felt that you were definitely opening up the possibilities for both of their futures. And I think that there is one shot where I forget who it is standing on a hilltop overlooking Medellin.
Adrian. Mm-hmm.
Adrian, yeah.
Bogota. Yeah,
it was Bogota. Okay.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, because wow, that city looks so beautiful. was that what you were thinking? That the city looks so beautiful?
Well, Dave, what was the painting that you had?
It's Friedrich's Wanderer Above a Sea of Clouds, which is my favorite painting, and it's this amazing painting of a guy with his back in the frame, and we see these mountaintops, and there's a lot of fog around him. And there's kind of like this ambiguity about what the future holds in this painting, and we kind of wanted to create a little bit of that in the final in this image of the film, because Adrian's future is so uncertain, and there is kind of like this desire to kind of show like how the fact that the film's called Nowhere, and there's a lot of questions about what the title means and why we chose that title. And one of the things I think with that image is that this guy does not know where he belongs at this point in his life, and he's kind of like looking out at this vast, I guess you could call it, beautiful city, and he doesn't know where he fits in at that particular moment, and so he's at a distance from it. That's kind of what the idea was behind that image.
Awesome. So David Henning, we have some questions from our viewers. Like both of you, my twin brother and I write and create films. Twin brother, what film advice would you give to your middle school self? Great question.
Make films and just enjoy it and just soak it in and watch movies and learn about as much as you can. I mean, we didn't start our filmmaking until we were in college. Like, we didn't really start working as filmmakers until we were in college. Before that, we did music. So I think that maybe that's the equivalence for this question. Just do I just soak it in. If I had the opportunity to go back and I knew I was going to be a filmmaker and I was in middle school and my brother and I we were probably watching a lot of movies and trying to like go out and make movies on. I guess we didn't have iPhones back then, but whatever little cameras we had, we probably would have been going out and trying to make movies with our friends, because you just learn so much just from doing and just from like making those mistakes at that point. So I would definitely like say just on the weekends go out and make movies. Just have fun. I mean, on your phones with your friends.
I gotta say, these iPhones now shoot 4K.
Yeah,
and
there you go.
iPhone 12 has 3 lenses.
And there's amazing films that have been shot on iPhones. So, yes.
Right. So from Seer Druid, we have this question: do you guys ever have creative differences? Because I know with a lot of director duos, they usually have a lot of creative differences. Now, of course, you're putting them on the spot. Seer Druid. They're going to try to minimize it because they're brothers and they love each other at the end of the day. But okay, I'm curious to see how you guys answer this question.
The answer is we had a lot on this film.
On this film, we had a lot of creative differences. We had a lot of interesting things. I think I'll never forget one day we were shooting a scene, and they're supposed to be in the United States, and Juan Paulo, our lead actor, one of our lead actors, he starts reading a book to all these children, and they're supposed to be in the United States in Spanish. And I pulled my brother aside and said, cut the whole scene. They cannot be reading in Spanish. They're in the United States. We want them to read in English. And so my brother said, no, we'll continue. And we ended up cutting the scene, and we ended up redoing the whole thing because, that was one thing. That was like one little thing. And there was I
don't even know if that's the best example. There was just a lot of differences we had on certain aspects of, I think I'll say it. We had some differences of opinion on some of the casting choices. And that was actually a lengthy discussion that we had over time. But yeah, to answer the question, yes, we've had a lot of creative differences. And even like recently, we're writing a lot of scripts right now, and we've had very intense conversations about what direction to take some of these stories in. And it happens, and we just have to like learn how to work through it. And it's great, actually, because at the end of the day, again, this is the thing about trust. I trust him, he trusts me, and we just know we're going to work it out.
Right, that's exactly.
The trust aspect of the relationship and finding a way to reconcile must be really important. So there is a question from Sam, if you could put it back up, David. Yes. So Sam asks, what challenges have you faced during filming or writing? And so I will narrow that, because we just talked about the writing process, but particular production processes, particularly because you're a low-budget film, right? But still, I never felt the lack of production value. You shot in restaurants, you shot you in various homes, apartments. Tell us about the streets of New York. Tell us about some of the challenges that you faced.
I mean, for one thing, we lost cast members day before, and we had to go out. So that was one. We were also shooting in Colombia, so we had to look for a diverse array of people. So we had our casting director go through Bogota and find tourists to go and fill in our party scenes or our office scenes with non-actors with people who were white, who were Asian, who were black, and try to create a diverse New York within a place within Colombia, which it has a specific look. So you had to create that. Our biggest challenge was definitely our apartment. The apartment was we had a hall. We had 6 months to look for this apartment. We couldn't find a New York apartment until the week before. And it was the living room space of our producer, Jimena, who offered us the space. And we had a week to construct that set because it was a living room space. So we had to put a wall,
build a wall
in front of it, get furniture, and we were unfortunately we didn't get there on time, so we had to cancel some production days and rehearse in the meantime to be able to get to the set that
we had to make up days because literally we started shooting on a Monday. We needed the set built by Wednesday. We were already way behind. The Wednesday comes around, we had to find another scene to shoot, and then Thursday, Friday of that week it was not ready. Saturday and Sunday we had other locations, so they were building and constructing, and that meant that most of our team was not on the other sets because they were busy building this apartment. And so we were kind of like, we were literally going in with a much smaller crew, and my brother was much more involved in creating the art of the lawyer office or the bar where we went. I mean, fortunately, some of those sets were fantastic and we didn't really have to do much, but we were working shorthanded those days while they were building the apartment. And I think Monday came around and it was kind of ready. So we kind of found one scene we could shoot, and then they were still constructing around us. So that was a challenge. And then also our main actor was doing college and university. He was doing his degree, Adrian Miguel, and he was also getting these commercials, and we were literally rescheduling the shoot every week so that he could go to school and do his other jobs. So that was another challenge that we had to constantly work. And these jobs were coming out and it would be week 1. And then he's like, oh, on week 3, I got this commercial with this bank. So we're like, okay, we'll figure out how we reschedule on week 3. And so that was the kind of mental gymnastics we're playing with while we have all of these delays. And we just had to kind of just let the ball roll and run with it,
Well, in New York, when we were shooting here in New York, I think we had a lot of fun because we were 6 people. We were shooting with this crew of 6 people, so the challenges were down, and we were able to, it became more of a brotherhood. It was just fun and interesting, and
the pressure was definitely
down because when you have a crew of 25 people, there are so many people moving around and moving parts, and you're kind of like, oh, okay. And you want to make sure that everyone's there on time. And one of the greatest things about this production was we never had to wait on camera. You usually have to wait on lights. We never had to wait on lights or camera. It was always really a lot of fun to work with them.
All right. Otaku Warrior writes, would you say working with your brother makes this a more fun experience?
Yes.
I agree.
Good answer.
No, I agree. We get to talk about our war stories with each other and reflect a lot on these things as we prepare the next stuff. And I think it's always really beneficial to have someone that you can kind of turn to and be like, this is the experience we had, and what can we learn from it, and how can we build on it? Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's like I said, when I'm writing and I'm writing by myself, I struggle a lot more than when I'm writing with him. And the same thing goes with making this movie. I don't think I could have. I made a short film, an experimental short by myself, and while I enjoyed the experience of doing that, I definitely was missing him a lot.
Same. I made an experimental short a year ago alone. I was in Colombia. He was in France. So we kind of said, oh, well, let's make something. So he made, and the experience felt a little bit. It was good because it makes you grow and makes you learn different things that you probably would have. But being able to work with my brother, we both unite our own ideas. We both get to talk about different films that we may have watched and that we could, influence how we shoot it. So it does help. It does help to have different creative minds together.
Great. I think we have time for one more question, then we'll wrap it up. Serafini says, what's your advice for finding your place in the film industry? It seems like there are so many options, and it can be very overwhelming.
We're still finding our way in the film industry. I don't know where I am right now. There's just like so much to learn every single day. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to like get to know as many people as I can. And right now, obviously that's very challenging, but like we're kind of involved in a bunch of different kind of programs to get to know people. We're doing this thing called Film Shop online with other New Yorkers, and every week we meet and we talk about our upcoming projects and we help each other build each other up. I'm trying to be as involved with the film community as possible, and I think it's just in terms of just trying to figure out what we're going to do next and trying to and just keep going, because I think there's a moment, and I think one of the things that was really, really important from making this film was you could tell that it's an experience. It's a very intense experience making a feature film, because there is a lot of things that you're constantly having to manage, not only externally but also internally within yourself. You're under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, and even when the film's done, that still lingers. And I think it's very easy, and I know firsthand that some people came out of the experience and said, I had that experience, I'm good, I'm done, goodbye. And for me personally, it was like I wanted more. And so I think that it's just a matter of just sticking with it and just like going forward, because it is hard. I mean, it's super challenging. I don't know what's going to happen next. We're still trying to figure that out, but we know that we're going to stick around and we're just going to keep going because we love this.
I mean, to shoot off Dave's answer, I think one of the most important things that I learned from this experience and from making this film, as I said, I'm still learning my position in this industry, and I'm still working to better and always improve my own artistic value. But one of the most interesting things I learned, I went to the Bogota film market and I met a lot of very interesting people, a lot of different collaborators who I have now for the future. And I learned so much while trying to sell this film, while trying to find how to release this movie. I learned so much from just meeting people and going and seeing events and going to different talks and chats. And of course, the film festivals have also been a very enjoyable experience and also a learning experience, and to meet different programmers, to meet different people who, at some point will be valuable to the development of your career. You never really know. So I think it's just meeting people and just, working and doing different projects, and you never really know who comes around and likes a script or a film that you made, and that might.
If I may add one more thing, and I think we've heard it many times in some classes that we've taken in the past or in workshops that we worked on, it's like, look at the people to your right, to your left, because they're probably in the same position that you are right now, and those are the people that you want to grow with.
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple to say, go and look for so and so star producer, but they're not. They have already. They're not going to answer you as much as your classmates and the people that you're working with, because those people are growing with you, and those people are going to at some point, be at that level, and you want to grow with those people. They're gonna elevate you.
You're not alone.
You're gonna elevate. You're not alone. Exactly.
Wow. So I'm sure we could go on for a lot longer, but we've come over at the end of our time. This conversation has been fantastic. And guys, this is a great film. And I hope that you will all be able to see it. And I want to thank Francisco and David for joining us. And I want to thank all of you out there on YouTube land for joining us. And I can't wait to see you in the next workshop. All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you.